Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things hobby tip. Now unfortunately my lamp hasn't shown up yet, so things are a little on the unlit side, which I suppose that's what a lamp is for, but I figured I could show you something interesting that you might find useful. Now this is what's called a weathering brush. Now I've heard it called all sorts of things. It's kind of similar to a stippling brush, but you can find these online. There are a few places that sell them, but I've thought, well, these are easy to make. What you're going to need is an old brush, something that has seen a bit of action. You'll see this one here, for example, is, poor thing, it's it's kaput. In other words, that's never going to paint another miniature. I've got here some foam out of a blister pack. Now, this might be a little hard to find in some cases, but go ahead and order something online. You'll almost certainly find it packed in this. A bit of super glue and some scissors, okay? All we're going to need is those four things. Now to start off with, what we need to do is trim down our brush. Now this one is a flat, or used to be flat, and I like that because it gives us a little bit more of an edge to work with, rather than a rounded brush. You can use whatever you've got handy. Now I'm going to trim off the bristles, and I want to do this leaving just a couple of millimeters of the brush behind. Okay, I don't want to go all the way to the metal and trim there. I want just a little bit of springiness left from some of those bristles. So like I said, you go to about 2 or 3 millimeters up and just trim those off. Okay, then you've got a short, flat top brush. Then you grab your fluffy stuff, and you'll find that this comes in a lot of different sort of textures. Sometimes it's quite coarse, sometimes it's quite smooth and very closely packed together. I like the slightly coarser stuff for what we're going to be using, but have an experiment. Just whatever happens to show up in your mail, use that. Now we don't need very much of this, but I'm just going to trim off a decent chunk, and then again. And then once you've trimmed it, what we want is, let's say, just that much. A couple of centimeters worth, maybe an inch if you want to be fancy, all right? Just that much. Then what we're going to do is grab just a little bit of super glue and dollop on one side. Grab your little bit of fluff and let's just stick that down. Hold that for a few minutes. And then do the same thing to the other side. Now when you fold this over, you don't want it to be super tight. You want a little bit of the springiness left on the end of your brush. So let's push that down together, and again, hold that for a couple of minutes. Then you can grab your scissors and just tidy it up a little bit. We don't need a whole bunch of extra fluff on the sides, so just trim it to whatever size you want. Now if you're using this for something bigger, say you want to do weathering on tanks or something, you might want a bigger brush. But for what I'm using, I just want something I can control a little bit easier, so that size is going to suit me well. Now what we'll do is grab just a little tiny dollop of paint, not very much at all, on the end of your brush, and just stab it around. A bit of paper towel or some toilet paper or whatever is good for this, until you notice you're leaving behind patchy little circles. All right. Then let's start on this chainsaw here. Just dab lightly. This is quite difficult without the without the overhead light. And you can use the edge of this brush to get this random effect on the weathering. So we'll go up here on a shoulder pad, and you can see I know exactly where my bristles are going to go. And I can just push down, roll it around as I like, and get a random edge to that. Now that's probably a little bit much for what I would normally do, but like I said, it's a bit hard with the camera in the way. You can have an experiment with this. You can also use the edge, so wherever you've trimmed off to the edge there, just pap a little bit of this, and that's all you need. Just enough to brighten up the edges and make it look like they've been dinged around a little. Let's do his chest. Just that. Now this is great if you've got something like orcs, or, like I said, big vehicles are a good one that benefits from this. Just anywhere that you want to very quickly dab on a little bit of wear and tear and get a nice random effect to it. So, there you go guys, easy as that. Like I said, you can do a bigger version of this very easily. Just use a bigger brush. And whatever you like the look of, have an experiment with it, because I think you'll find there is plenty of uses for this kind of tool. So, go have fun with it. Make yourself one of these if you've got an old brush you're going to get rid of otherwise, and have some fun.